Hello and welcome back to the channel, and today I want to give you 5 essential tips to help you lock your indie film. All these tips are based on my own real life experience working and editing my own Irish indie sci-fi comedy feature film, A Gardener's Planet, which I am now very close to picture locking, which is exciting. So this is maybe the most important step in order to avoid overwhelming anxiety, because as often happens with independent films, if you are the only one responsible for editing hours and hours of footage that everyone has worked so super hard on, and if you need to catalogue and edit it down to 80, 90 or even 120 minutes, then it can get overwhelming very quickly. Okay, so here we are now in the Premiere Pro file of the film, and when I started, I was actually putting all the scenes just on one timeline. And that's fine for short films, but when it comes to feature films, if you've all your scenes on one timeline, it's absolutely insane, as you can see, and very hard to edit. So I did then break it down into, different folders, and inside every folder was a different, was all the shots, and then, at the end there's a sequence, which is the scene. So that was just the best way of managing all the footage, because if you've everything on the timeline, it just becomes completely out of control, not just from the point of view of editing and changing things, but also from the point of view of trying to find things. It just becomes super hard. So there's a few different scenes there, but I've done that now and it seems to work pretty well for me. I see there's a few out of sync scenes there at the end, so all the scene is there, and in the case of that scene, I've dumped some spare shots which I may or may not be using into the actual scene sequence there at the start of the timeline. So once then I had done my organization in Premiere, I then made a handy list of all the scenes that were now in the edited film, and this was actually amazing and really eye-opening. Listen to this. So in our shooting script, this relic, we had 97 scenes. So we had 97 scenes going into production in 2022, and now coming out of that 2.5 years later in 2025, we have whittled those 97 scenes down to 50 scenes. 50 scenes! That means somehow over the course of 3 years I somehow lost 40 scenes. Don't even ask me, I don't know. And there's no way I'm going to go back through all this looking exactly what those 40 scenes are, but they've been amalgamated and combined into the film at various stages. So for me, being organized is one of the most important things, and I've made a video before on the consequences of not being organized, and if you haven't seen it, click here. It can really spiral out of control very quickly, as it did in this case with my editing organization. So learn from what I've done, don't make the mistakes I've made. So let me try and explain this as best I can. As I've gotten closer and closer to picture lock over the last couple of weeks, I've spent those weeks going through every scene and just taking off 2 or 3 seconds off every scene, which might not sound like a lot, but what I found is by doing that, it's led me to a kind of better understanding of what the natural rhythm of the scene needs to be. And by having that better understanding and by consistently taking off those 2 or 3 seconds, then suddenly I can find, after 2 or 3 weeks of doing that, I might find I can take 30 seconds off the scene. And that's a really exciting journey that I always love going on. So here's a good example of how we've shortened the scene. It was just a hotel room scene of 2 people talking, a relatively simple scene on the surface. And originally we were going to open with this shot here of them both sitting down and talking, and then Connor takes the phone call. But we changed that to Connor already on the phone at the start of the scene and just getting rid of that opening shot, and the other scene is nicer with a bit of depth of field and Connor walking in the background. And here's some specific editing that we're going to do right here. Just going to take the end off this. So we're just going to shorten this so that there's more of an impact. And those are the kind of edits I've been doing in that scene, just taking off whatever, maybe 7 or 8 or 11 frames there. But then there are also bigger examples, so listen to this. So, seems relatively straightforward, two people talking, bit of dialogue, but we also cut out this whole extra bit of just Connor going on, which was just too slow for the scene.
You understand? The garden, Harry. It's a metaphor. A metaphor that says everything.
So, it was in there into the film for a long time, but it was just too slow. And we just needed to get the scene done, get the scene tighter, get it down from, I think, 3.5, 4 minutes down to roughly 2 minutes now. And I guess the main takeaway here is just that, small changes can have a major impact. So this might not be as relevant to you, but this is a major thing I'm dealing with at the moment, is the sheer amount of incomplete visual effects. I was off for 2 weeks over Christmas, so I did a really good job there, if I can say so myself, of just, buckling down and getting all the shots done in scene 68. But there are still moments, sequences, and full-on scenes which still require a lot of attention from me, and I really need to make time for this. I really do. So, as you can see from the last video, with the visual effects, it's very hard to speed it up, because the process is the process, going from Wonder Studios to Blender to After Effects, so it's hard to speed that up. But here's a good scene that I worked on over Christmas where I did a lot of the aliens attacking the guards, and that's all complete. But if we come to this scene, now there's a lot of blue screen shots from awkward angles where I still need to get the backgrounds in from low angles and handheld shots. And then other scenes, there's just this. So this is an interesting period for me, really, if I think about it, because I've had ownership of the film for so long, being one of the writers, being the director, being the cinematographer, being the producer, being the editor, doing the special effects. But I'm not going to do the music, and I'm not going to do the post sound. I'm handing those off to other people. But, I need to kind of let go of the project now, but I also need the project to be in as good a shape it can be, so that when these other people are watching it, who weren't involved necessarily in the main bulk of shooting, they need to know what's happening in the film. So you need to make sure you're organized at this point, that when you are handing your film off to other people, they have a very clear idea of what you want and what you need. So editing is all about honesty. The more honest you can be with yourself about your footage, the easier it'll be in the future to sit in front of your film with an audience and be able to enjoy it. So you need to forget any preconceptions you have. This is your last chance to save your film. This is your last chance to save the film. So be honest with yourself, please, about what is and isn't good enough to go in your film. And I've lots of examples of where I decided that there were things that I had shot that weren't good enough for the film. And here on the left are 4 examples of scenes that I decided weren't up to the quality I needed them to be. And there on the right are the 4 scenes they were replaced by. Sometimes we changed the location. Oftentimes it was just a case of improving the camera work and cinematography, and also in some cases we changed the blocking. But I'm super proud of all the work that went into doing these scenes a second time. So there is still a bit of a stigma around reshooting, and sometimes you hear a lot about filmmakers who are just geniuses and it seems to be no effort to them. But maybe you don't always hear enough about people who are just working and working and working, trying to make something as good as it can be. What I found in my experience is that nobody really minds doing something for a second time. Everybody on your project who's come to help you wants the film and wants the project to be as good as it can be. And in the long run, I think people will always appreciate making a better project, and doing it right is always better than doing it fast. So anytime you do any kind of project, you always need to ensure that you make time to get perspective on what you are doing. And making time to walk away and come back and look at what you're doing is so important. And then sometimes the hardest part, walking back again. Walking back and starting again and editing again and being critical about what you have and getting feedback is all part of the creative process. You can do this. You can finish your film. You can. I believe in you. You got this. Locking your film is a major milestone on the filmmaking journey, and hopefully some of these tips here will just help you to make, you know, your film as polished as it can be. I've spoken about some of the major issues I've encountered, but I would love to hear about, you know, in the comments, some of the other issues other people have encountered, you know, other people have encountered, you know. Sometimes we're all in our own bubble, but you know, we're all encountering the same things. So I would love to hear from some other people in the comments. Thank you for watching anyway. If you haven't already, do please consider liking and subscribing. And we will see you back in another video soon with more tips from the world of indie film making.